Hello, Black Eagles. Welcome back to the Black Eagles podcast. I'm joined by Le Financier, Ural Alhan. Ural, thanks for joining me. And today we're going to do some more, how should I put it? Explaining a little bit, or you are, I should say, going to explain a little bit in layman's terms what all these recent financial updates mean. There was an audit report 2 weeks ago, maybe 10 days ago. And people don't really know what to make of these things. We were talking a little bit off air already about it, but there's a lot of misinformation out there. I think lots of people who don't really fully understand those numbers and try and make something out of it. One of my big pet peeves I've had for many years now, ever since the debt got converted into lira, is that there's always this bombastic nature in the media of all the debt increased by 8 billion or by this much and this much and this much. But in reality, when we look at it, yes, it looks really bad on paper, and I'm not saying it's not. Of course, the debt is increasing year by year. That's undisputable. But there's also the factor of the Turkish lira and a lot of the expenditures of the club, of course, being in euros or even in dollars sometimes. That will take with it, because the lira is going down. It was stable for a while, I felt, around 40, but now with the whole crisis with the war with Iran and the United States and Israel, now we've seen another nosedive in the lira. It's gone down to, I just checked it, €1 is 52.90 lira, I think. Last week it was 50 lira. So, I mean, it's still going down. Yeah, 52.90. And yeah, a month and a half, 2 months ago, maybe it was 40. So just to give that, put that into perspective a little bit, the lira is significantly dropping once again, and that is going to have an impact on this as well, as it does every year, because the lira has been slipping since 2013, basically. So what do you make initially out of this report? What does the debt currently look like? How much did it increase compared to last year? And maybe also put into context a little bit that what period this debt increase is covering.
Yeah, sure. So thanks for having me again. Hopefully we can shed some light on what's always a recurring topic and always creates some quite some noise. Maybe rightfully so, but sometimes maybe it's also too exaggerated indeed. So the report came out, especially for the Divan Congress or the Senate. They gathered, and that there was a meeting where also Adala spoke and shed his light on the developments of the past period. And of course, we have this periodic audit report, which basically gives a current state update. And that's where, of course, these reports come from, where they show, there's an increase of X and Y, etc. So that's always interesting, because we do the type of information or the amount of information we get from the club is not much specifically in this detail. So these reports are basically our own the only method of having some inside view in what the club is actually doing. And factually, right? So not only based on what we're being fed, the way they want it. And having said that, yes, there is a debt increase. So in May 2025, it was reported 17.7 billion TL, which is approximately 332 million euros. And now it's 24.6 gross, so net is 24.3, because you reduce some cash that you have at hand. But there's an increase of 6.9 billion TL, so roughly 39% increase of total debt. And surely the exchange rate plays a role, especially if you convert, because I converted now at current exchange rates. So you need to correct. You need to make that correction in your reporting, and that's what the club does in that sense. However, this FX effect trickles down through everything. So any deal that you make in euros but have to pay in TL, that has an impact, of course, on your finances, and that also has an effect on your debt increase, or your liability increase, etc. There is a factor. There's an FX factor for sure. But having said that, the debt has increased, and the part that I agree with you is that the bombasticness of it, that sort of a shock that it's increased. I'm not surprised that it's increased, because if you follow the club, you don't have to follow it in detail, also not the finance in detail. But if you just look at the high over picture, this was coming, right? Look at the summer, look at what you did there, new transfers, etc. No big new sponsorships, no income increasing activities per se, not big at least. So I wonder what people expected. Why are they so surprised that the debt increased? Because there was no reason to believe that we would have decreased the debt, course, right?
We didn't qualify for Europe. That's 10 million euro or something, and that's a significant amount. If we look, for example, Galatasaray Fenerbahce, Fenerbahce also made a loss. Galatasaray made, I think, 700 million lira profit. But if you think about it, 700 million lira, what is that? That's like 12 million euros or something? Or
yeah, I think so.
Take the Champions League away, and they're minus 30 or more. So just to put that into context, how big of a difference European football can make, which of course makes Adal's statements of the beginning of the season of "I don't care about Europe" even more ludicrous, because even if you think, okay, our team is not, we don't have a team to compete for the trophy, which we didn't, and that's fine, but getting to the minimum of the league stages of any tournament, whether it's the Champions League, Europa League, or Conference League, should be a bare minimum for a club like Beşiktaş, Fenerbahce, Galatasaray, even Trabzonspor, because it makes a significant financial difference. Now, obviously, Europa League and Conference League are significantly lower than the Champions League, and there's a big discrepancy between Europa League and Conference League, but whether you can add an additional 5 or 10 million euros to your revenue, that does make a big difference. And maybe also when we later talk about some of these numbers talked about for the sponsorships, because I think a lot of people are a little upset by those numbers as well, which I understand, but 3 million euros, 4 million euros, 5 million euros, it all adds up, and it makes an important difference at the end of the day when the bills are due. So
of course.
So how much we're talking about in euros now, roughly? What's the loss that the club led over the course of May to November?
So loss in the sense that sort of the you mean, because I don't think they.
Well, so this.
I wonder which number.
The debt increases is what was it, 7 billion? So how much is that roughly in euros? Let's start there. So how much was?
I think it's for. So it was 332. And I just calculated at the current exchange rate, right? So of today. So that, and the 24.3 billion or 6 billion amounts to 460 million.
Okay, so that is that's a 130 million increase.
Yeah, correct. So the 6.7 billion, that's roughly 128 million euros increase. Yeah, correct.
Okay, and that's of course with today's conversion rate. So
yes,
but how do they account for that increase in debt, for example? So how do we explain that? So obviously there were lots of transfers, transfer fees paid, but also does this perhaps include Dikilitaj, certain aspects of that, or any other expenses made by the club that are maybe outside of the sportive aspect of the club?
Yeah, so I think the biggest difference you see is increase in salaries and transfer fees. Right, that created an increase of 131% over the same period. So where you paid, where you had a liability of 2.8, it's now 6.5 billion. So again, an increase of 131%. That's the biggest impact on your on this. And what you have to realize in this, what you need to include, is that if you let's say you bought Orkun, he's being paid in installments.
Yeah.
The total number is included in this number, and that's why it's so high, because you need to report it whenever you take that liability upon you, right?
Yes.
So that's included. It's same with Gedson Fernandez transfer. We received from Moscow the full transfer fee, but we promised to pay Benfica. What was it, 5 million or 10 million? I can't. 10 million over the course of 5 years in installments. But the total number of 10 million is already included in this number, in your total liabilities. So that also creates all these installments. That also creates a little bit of a mismatch, because yes, we are repaying it over 5 years, so it's not cash out immediately, but as a total liability number, that's where this increase comes from. So it's accounted for in the total of this period.
Yeah. So does it specify specifically the transfer fees? Does it show how much we paid for Orkun exactly? Because reports
not per player.
Okay.
Not in this report, and not per player.
Because first they said 25 million, 5 million bonus. So what are they counting in this report? Then are they counting the 25, or are they counting the full 30 with the bonus included already? That's of course stuff we don't know.
So sorry for just to so they count for the 25 million, so not the bonus.
Okay, that's good.
That's for sure. Not the bonus, just 25 million. Yeah.
So then we have 25 million from Orkun, 10 from Gedson. I would imagine they count the full. I think it was 17 or 18 million for Tammy, because the initial report was 15, but then that's January, so that'll be another 15 then. So just that's 50 million of the 128 million accounted for with 3 players basically. You can offset then with another 10.8 from incoming money for Gedson, so that we're on roughly 40. But you said salary increases. I was under the impression that the salaries actually decreased, but obviously Rafa wasn't gone yet in this period. Rafa only left in January, so his 6 million is still in there.
Included.
Tammy Abraham's 7 or 6 million, whatever you want to call it, is going to be in there.
Yeah.
So Chiro left, obviously his 6 million's gone, but I guess then we didn't. Probably compared to then, we now decreased the wages probably stayed roughly the same, because Agbadu, Ohyungyo, Murillo, Olaitan, they all came in January. They are not in this report yet. Those fees are not in this report yet. So, but their wages aren't either. But obviously, with losing Rafa and Tammy, you offset, that's 12 million off the books. And then you bring in a bunch of players for less than that. So that should go down at least. But it's good to know then. So these numbers look really big, but obviously we need to take into account that a lot of these numbers are going to be paid off over installments, like you said, over 4 or 5 years.
Yeah, and to add, so they did show on also an update of March, and there you see a decrease of salary. So you see that effect, that they have negotiated better or lower salaries, but as a counterweight to it, the transfer fees are higher. So you see an increase in transfer fees. The liability that we have for transfer fees it increases, but the salaries decrease. So you see that our salary proposition becomes better. That improves, but on the other hand, the transfer fees are higher if we look at the March, so including the winter transfer window. So you see that effect.
And we also just learned the other day that CAS has upheld UEFA's decision to fine Beşiktaş for 900,000 euros for exceeding their budget for the 2024-2025 season. So they fined us 900,000 euros, which gets deducted of UEFA prize money. It's not that Beşiktaş have to pay that out of pocket, but this is this is just an assumption on my part, but I cannot imagine that we did not exceed the budget again this season. It's almost unthinkable, right?
Yeah, but that's the thing. It's difficult to make those pluses and minuses because they don't break it down like that, right? So, but I think maybe with the installments, it could be.
Yeah.
I don't know the UEFA rules on that. Adala said that they are well within those thresholds, so they shouldn't. So I would be surprised based on their statements or the club statements that they would exceed it. But of course, you never know. I agree with you. You never know because what we are being told and what's actually on paper, I also don't know if that's actually true.
Says a lot of nice words, but few of them ever turn out. Okay, so that's important to put that into context then for people so that they know this drastic increase in debt is very logically explainable by those numbers. Obviously, they give a projection of March already. What does the transfer projection look like then? Because obviously that went up again. Agbadu cost us 18. Orkunyu cost us 14. Murillo, I think, how much did he cost us? I forget, but I think he was...
I also don't remember.
Yeah, Alaitan was 5. I don't remember Murillo exactly, but I think it wasn't... I don't think it was lowish. I think it was also between 4 and 6 or something, so...
So compared to last season, for instance, it's 100. So salaries, also bonuses and things like that for players, it goes up from 166 million to 196, and then goes down. So 166 to 189. So there's an increase, but compared to earlier this season. It's a decrease, so maybe it's better to compare the beginning of this season versus now, including the winter season, because last season, the gap is quite big.
Yeah.
So to restate, it was 196. It went down to 189.
Okay, so it went down by 7 million. But that also includes the transfer fees, right? That's not the wage.
No, this is only salaries, salaries and bonus, etc.
And that's
so transfer fees.
Is that in lira or is that in euros?
No, it's in euros.
189 million euros.
Yes.
Really?
And sorry, this is including. Let me put it. This is including the total contract length.
Oh,
so this is not per season.
Okay,
sorry. So this is the total liability per contract.
Yes,
for every player. So the player that has 1 year contract, the players that have 5 year contracts, for instance, everything that we have as a liability on that contract accumulates to 189 million at the moment, including bonuses and things like that.
Including bonuses, but how do they know? How can they project the bonuses? I mean, lots of bonuses are based on wins and stuff like that.
But there must be a minimum, right?
Okay, yeah.
I think there are minimums in the contracts. Okay,
so
but we could exceed it.
Yeah. That's interesting though, because I think Galatasaray and Fenerbahçe, their annual wage budget is around 165 million, and we are spending that over the entire duration of these players' contracts. So some of those contracts are 3 years, 4 years, 5 years. Obviously, some are like Rasica and stuff. Their contracts are up in 2027. Saliucan's up this season, for example. There's contracts expiring every year, obviously. But the big contracts that we have, Orkun for 5, Agbadu for 3, Orkungu 1.5. Those guys are obviously under longer term contracts. So that's actually not bad then, I think. You know, I mean, it looks okay-ish. We still have some fat trim, obviously, with Semi, Musrati, Mucci. Are those still on the books? I guess they are, but parts of their wages are being covered by their clubs. So okay, that's interesting.
So they'll reduce those parts, but we still have a contractual obligation. So assuming that they will come back, that's then included, right?
Yeah.
And then the transfer fees is from 99 million to it goes up to 129.
Okay.
So there's an increase
Yeah.
there.
Mhm.
And then the total, so this is both combined, is 295, goes up to 318.
Yeah.
And again, so what you see is that the transfer fees, those have increased significantly,
Yeah.
while the salaries, etc., have been reduced
Yeah.
a little bit. And this is a snapshot, right? Because coming transfer window, this picture will change again because
Yes, of
outgoing
course.
players, incoming
Yeah.
players, etc.,
Yeah.
etc. So, but this gives you roughly an idea of the liabilities that we have for the players and the
Yeah.
player contracts.
And these costs are largely guaranteed, basically, because it already factors in that players have expiring contracts. There, for example, Rasic only has a year left. Obviously, it can still be lowered with players leaving prematurely, being sold, being let go, not being paid compensations if they're being let go. So those can be decreased, but they can also, of course, be, like you said, increased with new transfers coming in the summer, which undoubtedly will happen. Okay, so that's interesting. And then something else that
Because they did a
sorry, go ahead.
Oh, sorry. Just to add, there was they did an exercise, and this is, of course, in my view, a bit of a ridiculous exercise. If you don't add new players and just continue with the current group and also with their expiring contracts, by 2030 you're almost down to 20 million. So that means that in 26, 27,
Yeah.
28, the bulk is there, and then obviously you'll have a runoff.
Yeah.
It's a ridiculous exercise in my view because
Yeah.
it's nonsensical. That's not how you
Yes.
run a club, of course.
Of course.
But it shows where the weight is, of course, of these liabilities,
Yeah.
which is in upcoming 1 to 2 seasons.
Yeah. Obviously, we don't have that many players under 5-year contracts, right? Like there's a handful of players that have plus 3-year contracts. The majority of players will have between 2 and 3-year contracts. So yeah. Okay, so something else that was very interesting that we saw the other day from the audit report also was that we found out what Sedel Adale's plan is to exit the bank union agreement. So his plan, he also, I believe, clarified this during the Divan meeting. So his plan is basically bring in new sponsorships. Tüpraş has already been, I believe, announced officially. They will be paying, if I'm not mistaken, 21 or 22 million euros for 3 seasons, correct?
Yeah, correct. 21 million.
That was announced officially. Then Beko has not yet been announced, I don't think. But they will be paying, in the report, in the audit report, it says 8 million. Mustafa Karataş the other day said he said the exact number was like 431 million lira or something, which boiled down to 9 million euros.
It was announced, by the way. So what Mustafa mentioned, that 460 million tele, that's being confirmed by the club.
Okay, so that does roughly translate to 9 million then, because I think.
Yeah, let me quickly.
Yeah, because I think the audit.
I think so.
Because I think the audit.
8.8.
Yeah, so the audit report mentioned 8 million, right?
Correct.
And obviously,
but this could be currency. This I don't know, but this could be currency. I didn't calculate it back, but this could be currency difference. I don't know. 1 million is quite large, but there's a discrepancy indeed in what the club has mentioned and what the report is stating. Yeah.
So, but obviously, look, when Mustafa said this, the lira was 50. Now it's 52.9. So that 2.9 accounts probably for that 200,000 deficit there from his estimation. So 22 million from Tüpraş, 9 million from Beko, and those. Well, the report mentioned, I think, Tüpraş is being paid in full ahead of time. So we are signing a 3-year contract, but they are paying everything now so that Beşiktaş can get out of the bank union debt. But that also means that in the next, obviously, the next 2 seasons, the 2 following seasons, I should say, or even 3, really, if you think about it, because if we get out of the bank union agreement now already, then we have 3 seasons where we won't have any income from the naming rights at the stadium. Beko, same thing. That was already confirmed as well. They paid the 8 or the 9 million up front. That's going to be used. But then there's one question mark, really, is Nike. And we had a tweet that kind of went viral the other day from an account that I'm not familiar with, really. And this person, based purely on the audit report, just used, for the most part, common sense, assumed, because the audit report mentions, I think, that sponsor income varying between 3 and 5 years will be taken into... Well, the club won't generate 3 to 5 years of income from certain sponsorships or whatever. So they assumed the Nike amount of 15 million, which was mentioned in the audit report, if I'm not mistaken, is for 5 years. So they, added 2 and 2 together and came down to the calculation of, okay, Nike are paying Beşiktaş 3 million a year for 5 years. We don't know if that's true. And everyone everyone seemed to just copy paste that and assumed it was correct. We don't know if it is correct. I have some question marks with it because there have been mentions of some credible sources in the past that this was a very historical deal for Beşiktaş, the highest amount that they ever received for a sponsorship for the shirts. So 3 million a year is impossible if that is correct what those people were saying. But guys like Murat Uzan were saying is, unless of course they were fed misinformation, which is possible. Maybe they were told, oh, we're getting 15 million per season. But what do we know from the language used in the audit reports? Is there anything that clearly makes it out that, okay, this is for 1 year, this is for 2 year, 3 year, 4 year, 5 years? Or do you think that there is some deliberate maybe ambiguity about it?
Yeah, let's dissect this one, because interestingly enough, to add to the not the confusion, but sort of the lack of information, Adala only mentioned Tüpraş and Beko in his statements, and not Nike. But Nike is mentioned in the audit report. Yeah. So the audit report is more clear on this than Adala was. So all three in the report, all three are included. So the total sums that they're paying, just what you said, 21 million Tüpraş, 9 million Beko, and then 15 million for Nike. And what the report says, that these are contracts for 3 to 5 years. So that means Nike is 5 years, and that they're saying that the amounts that we receive, they are all prepaid. So a lump sum, we'll receive them lump sum. All of them will be used for repayment of the financial debt, and they even calculate with that repayment already in the report, assuming that the money is already in. And that's how they showed it in the report. So that means indeed, if you follow the report, that Nike will pay 50 million for 5 years. Yeah. That's what you can make out of the text of the report. So they say the total revenue or the total income out of those sponsorship contracts will be used for that. The only thing which is a little bit confusing, if you really read the text or dissect the text, is that they will say, for the upcoming 3 years, we won't have this sponsorship income, which in that sense is a bit weird, because why didn't you include the Nike contract length, right? So, yeah, but I think from the looks of it and rereading the report, it looks like that Nike indeed will pay us 50 million for 3 years. For 3 years, exactly, right? Sorry, for 5 years. Sorry, for 5 years. But if we have to assume no mistakes were made in the audit report, then it would be 3 years though, right? Because they say, okay, these contract durations are 3 to 5 years, paid up front. Mustafa Karataş responded to the tweet we were talking about earlier of the, I don't even remember the account, what the name was, who did the whole dissection and said, okay, 15 million, 5 years, whatever. And Mustafa Karataş said 15 million is indeed an amount that was paid up front, but it's not the total number, is what he said. I don't know if I showed you that tweet.
It was in the responses.
No, I know I know the tweet. I know the tweet. But the thing is, so there are two paragraphs of text in the report that are tackling this. The first part is saying Tüpraş, Nike, and Beko income over 3 to 5 year sponsorship deals. The total sums will be paid. They will be used for debt repayment.
Yeah.
And then later on, in also I think a screenshot that I shared with you, there they make this statement that for the next 3 years we won't have this sponsorship income, and that contradicts. So the report contradicts itself on these two statements.
Okay, but that's Tüpraş and Beko, right? That you just mentioned.
No, including Nike. So each time, even in both separate statements, they, paragraphs, they mention all three of them. So all three of them in total, we will receive 45 million euros.
Okay. Yeah.
So that so the amounts are correct, but where it contradicts is that it says the sponsorship income normally over 3 to 5 years will not be available in the next 3 years, and that's where it contradicts. So that's a bit of a odd sentence.
Yeah.
To be honest.
Yeah. So best case scenario, Nike is 5 years and prepaid 3 years, and the other 2 seasons will still be paid at a later date, which then would mean 5 million a season. And worst case scenario is 3 million a season.
Yeah, and to be fair, the club didn't, or nobody sort of said no, this is not right. You are sort of misrepresenting it. Please wait for the official statements. So the fact that they didn't contradict this, or they didn't say anything, comment about this, gives me reason to believe that it is indeed 15 million for the total of 5 years. And what they're now saying, or how they're twisting this, is that they're saying this the reason why it's such a lucrative deal is because of two things. One, there's no pre-ordered amount. So normally the clubs say, okay, we expect an X amount of sales in shirts, etc. So you can get out of the sponsorship, let's say 1 million euro of revenue per season you will get back from sales or whatnot. Maybe 1 million is too high for Beşiktaş, but just as an example, they say that that's not part of the contract, and they say that we have a higher margin. So instead of 30% of margin we keep on every shirt sold, we keep 40% or maybe even higher. So now they're twisting it, saying the reason why this contract is unprecedented or so lucrative is because we get better stipulations in the contract.
I was wondering about that as well, because we of course saw the other day there was this news of Adidas, there being an issue between Beşiktaş and Adidas, because Beşiktaş had already put in the order for training gear and stuff for the camp, and supposedly, according to this report, which seems ludicrous to me, that was for a total amount of 3 million, which that does not compute to me. Like, how do training, like just training gear for the players for preseason, maybe it would also include like shirts already for the beginning of the season or something, I don't know, but how could that order amount to 3 million? To me, that kind of comes across of, okay, they're trying to inflate the costs so that Nike paying that, or Beşiktaş not having to pay that for Nike, would seem a bigger deal. That's how it kind of comes across to me. I don't know.
It would be weird just for the gear, right? So there must be a contractual reason, like maybe a breakup fee, maybe something like that. And it would be a big misstep of the club if they miss this.
Oh yeah, of course.
And that now switching sponsors is going to cost us 3 million. I thought it was lower, but if it's 3 million, it's an
$3 million.
It's really high amount.
Supposedly.
Yeah,
I think it was like.
But still, it's a substantial amount, right?
Yeah. Of course, yeah. I mean, look at this. I don't know what to make of this. I feel like everything that we're being told since the beginning from Adala, he always under-delivers, right? Like, everything is always hyped up, and it never boils down to what he promised. Like, the same thing can be said about Tikilitash. The projected numbers for that are I would say, underwhelming. There's still huge numbers. There's still a lot of money, and if used wisely, it can make a big impact on the club's debt. But yeah, but of course now we also learned that there will be a prepayment for Dikilitas of 2.2 billion, if I'm not mistaken.
Correct.
Correct. And that will also be used to get out of the bank union debt. So the 45 million used from the sponsors plus the prepayment of the Dikilitas project of 2.2 billion, which, how much is 2.2 billion? That's like 40 million or something?
Yeah, I think a little bit more, but something like that, yeah.
So a total of, let's call it 90 million euros that will be used to get out of the bank union debt. So that in turn will then, if I'm not mistaken, free up, or not free up is maybe not the right word, but Beşiktaş have to pay between 40 and 50 million euros in interest fees every season to this loan. And they have now negotiated with the banks that whatever outstanding interest Beşiktaş still have to pay for the loan will be paid off in the next 3 years, if I'm not mistaken, right? So that will be paid off in 2029. So the capital of the debt, which is, let's call it 85 million or whatever, will be paid off in full with the income from Dikilitas and the sponsorships.
The sponsors.
So then the only thing left is the outstanding interest. Did the club audit report specify how much interest is still outstanding?
I think it specifies, but the thing is that the banks did not yet approve this. So there's a nuance to this.
Okay.
So Adalem made it seem like this is already a done deal, but it's not a done deal.
Yeah.
So it could be that if the banks refuse, that you still have to pay that interest immediately. And he says, well, I'm sure that they will accept, etc. So he tried to put some pressure, public pressure on them. Yeah. But the structure is indeed, as you say, right? So half from sponsorship money, half from prepayment of Dikilitas, which should come in, this month, in April. And then indeed repaying the capital, but we are still officially not completely out of the banking debt, because you will have to pay that interest from in installments in 3 years indeed. But the banks have not yet agreed to this, and you need this because this is becoming a settlement agreement, because normally you pay interest and then capital, and now they're paying capital, and then the remaining interest will be the remaining debt. And also they don't want to do interest on interest. That's at least what I gather from this, because otherwise you still pay ongoing interest until the full debt is repaid. So those details are important, I think, for also to understand the cash out still that we have under this agreement. But more interestingly, and that's where this becomes more difficult, the banking debt or our total debt was increased by 1.1 billion, so by 21 million euros in January. So they took out a separate loan. I think I mentioned this in the WhatsApp group.
I think you mentioned
they already
report as well, probably.
As well, exactly. So they took out this additional loan, and the total debt was increased to 4.7 billion. That additional loan that had 10% higher interest fee. So that's also quite interesting, of course. But that has already been repaid.
Okay.
They mentioned that that's already repaid, but that repayment comes out of that sponsorship money, so that toothbrush money, so to say.
Oh, okay.
So the story is that he went to our great sponsor. Say, okay, I need to break off these contracts. I need new sponsorship contracts because I want to repay the banking debt, etc., etc. And they agreed to it. Coach agreed to it, and then, but now we learn it's not per se used for the banking debt. It was used for that temporary loan they took out in January. So I hope that he informed Tupras about this Because otherwise, he went there with the story, I want to get out of the banking debt, but all of a sudden he repaid that extra loan they took out in January. So that doesn't seem very honest. But that is the case at the moment. So that 1.1 billion was repaid first, which makes sense because there's an higher interest fee, and also a little bit of reduction of the capital of the banking union. And then the remaining part will be Dikiletaj and Beko and Nike.
Yeah. Okay. So I just coincidentally just read a tweet from Serjan Dikme, who said that the budget of the team, which is 40 million euros this season, will be increased to 60 million euros next season. I'm very curious, how do they plan to increase the budget so drastically by 1/3? How do you see that as a possibility? How can Beşiktaş compete with Fenerbahçe and Galatasaray? How will Beşiktaş be able to increase their budgets? There's a lot of hype going into the summer, I would say, with the transfers being made in January, and lots of those pundits that are all, in Adal's pocket to a degree, I think, are saying, okay, well, Beşiktaş are going to make more transfers of the caliber of Agbadu and such. How is that possible, do you think?
Well, based on the current figures, it's not. Let me even if you save this interest, of course it creates some budget, but it's not, because if you look at the numbers, also the amount that we pay for players that are on loan, it has a substantial effect on our budget and liquidity, etc. So the liquidity is not there. So that means more transfers with installments and that type of things. So we're locking more and more the future of Beşiktaş. We are locking in, and our future budgets we are already locking in. That's been really spent. You see decrease in income. So sales of shirts and etc. is down compared to last year. We talked about UEFA income. That's not there. So you see, in general, there's a decrease in income, in revenue. So that needs to be tackled, right? Because the sponsorship, that's also not part of your budget. It frees up this interest payment if we get out of the banking debt. But you need additional income to tackle this. And Dikiletaj, you get an upfront payment, but the remaining payments, the money that you'll receive from Dikiletaj, that will be over a 2-year period or maybe even longer before you have sold everything, right? So you can't expect more from there at the moment. And that money, to be honest, it's already spent if you look at the liabilities that we have right now. So Dikiletaj is also is going to give you some additional budget based on your current liabilities.
But
so
those
I don't know how they're going to do this, because they need they need more revenue, so they need more sponsorships or bigger deals or create something to have this budget, or take out a loan. But then we have that will be a huge problem, of course.
No more loans, please. And that's of course what we've been saying for a long time. And then of course he went and took out a new loan, and he's been repaid now. But it's like,
but out of your sponsorship money, right?
How do you survive in a financial climate like Turkey, right, where you have to pay 40-50% interest? It's impossible. I cannot imagine that in other European countries, football clubs have to pay those types of interest rates. Like Real Madrid, Barcelona, they have huge loans running as well. But what interest rates do they pay? Maybe 15% at most. I don't even know if they pay something like that, because I don't know how it works.
I would be surprised, to be honest, if they pay that much. But it's much lower, of course. This is killing. But those clubs also have a totally different revenue model, right? Something that we do not have. And to be fair, in the past 1.5 year that we have, the past year that we are now, 1.5 year under Adala, what sort of what addition did he make? What sort of extra revenue stream did he really create, right? So it's quite questionable.
It's also almost like a one-off, right? It's not a sustainable income
No.
generation. It's like, you can.
No.
Well, it depends, right? Like if we keep the properties and we rent those properties out, then it's a sustainable income. But yeah,
We won't.
we won't. No, we will.
I don't expect we will keep anything.
We'll
I
sell
don't
it.
think
Yeah.
we will. I think we won't keep anything. I think everything will be sold and split with the construction company. And the problem is that is selling an asset that the club already had, right?
Mhm.
Nothing is added.
Yeah.
Looking at all those promises, nothing is added as an extra revenue stream. There are small projects, so it's not completely nothing, but nothing of any financially substantial that we can say, okay, this really adds to the budget, right?
Yeah.
I think it's quite worrisome that none of those projects are, that there are no big projects that really created a big income or revenue in that sense. Even the sponsorships that he took, apart from those big three, Gain, they still not mentioned how much money we received from Gain. The other ones, the Kara van Eerstjaat, so the changes on the shirts, etc. 6 months contract, 1 year contract. If you look at the total sponsorship income, the bulk is Tupras Beko and Nike, of course. And then there's a very limited amount for all of those. So that gives me reason to believe it's just peanuts what we agreed with them.
Yeah.
The amount that they paid us to become sponsor of Beşiktaş, it's not substantial. So in my view, they also failed to get really good sponsorship contracts out of them.
Of course, 100%. I mean, if you look at the Vodafone deal was signed in 2013 or something, and because it expired, I believe 2022, 2023, something like that, right? And the Vodafone deal for the naming rights of the stadium was 10 years, and the shirts was 5 years, and that was in total for an amount of $145 million for 10 plus 5 years. So 10 years for the stadium, 5 years for the shirts. That's, what is that? That's like, that was 45 million for the shirts for 5 years. So that's what, 8 million a year or something like that, give or take. And then 10 million US dollars per year for the stadium. If we look now, Tupras are paying 21 million euros for 3 years. That's not terrible, but it's less than the Vodafone deal that was signed over a decade ago. And Vodafone on the shirt is what? That's double, triple the money that we're getting from Beko. So we somehow, I don't think there will be many football clubs in the world that had a significantly more lucrative sponsorship deal 10 years ago than they have now, because the economy changes, and normally you would imagine, inflation, sponsorship deals go up because inflation goes up, but for us it only went down. Inflation went up a bunch and sponsorship deals went down. So if you look at our rivals, and we know, of course, Galatasaray, Fenerbahce, like especially Galatasaray, we know with them, like a lot of these numbers that they are receiving from sponsors, they're not realistic. These are not on the up and up. The same thing can be said about Fenerbahce, because a lot of their sponsorship deals came from small coach companies that were owned by Ali Koç. So he essentially just pumped as much money as he realistically could without it getting flagged by UEFA or whatever governing body is monitoring these things, to artificially inflate the budget of their clubs. That's what they do. But still, you can't expect, if you're trying to do things on the up and up and you don't have that type of a president yourself who's going to do that type of stuff, you can't expect to compete with their numbers necessarily. But our numbers are significantly lower, right? Like it's almost depressing. Even though, 3 million euros a year, I can tell you, Racing Genk, Anderlecht, even Club Brugge maybe, they would love those types of sponsorship deals. But in Turkey, it seems small. It seems like peanuts.
Yeah, it's not enough. And to be honest, I think you devalue the club with these deals, right? And I understand it from a Tupers point of view. I even understand it from a Beko point of view, because Tupers is not looking for a sponsorship, and they're basically not interested to make this sponsorship deal. It's purely based on a relation that Rami coach wants to help out, etc., etc. And then he doesn't want to hand out money. He just said, okay, then we tie it into a sponsorship money, because then.
Is Tupres also owned by Coach?
Yes, it is.
Oh, okay. I didn't know that. All right, that makes sense then. So
and then
okay, so basically, Rami Coach is pumping 30 million euros into the club again.
Yeah, and he's doing it out of the. He's doing it out of the marketing budget, so to say, of the company, right? So that's why he wants to do it in a sponsorship deal. He doesn't want to hand out money to a president, say, hey, here's 30 million, have fun, right? That's not the way. Yeah. He's a businessman. He's a fan, but he's also a businessman. So I understand his way of thinking is, okay, I need to get a sponsorship out of this, and then I'm fine. But he's also not going to give you crazy numbers, because again, Tupras doesn't need that sponsorship. It's a company that operates only in Turkey. It doesn't have an international profile, so it's just doing it out of goodwill, so to say.
And even with sponsors like Philips, for example, who were the sponsor. I mean, look, PSV Eindhoven literally is called Philips Sportvereniging. They were founded. Philips founded that football club essentially, and they were their sponsors for decades on the shirt. But that also ended at a certain point. So you could say, okay, well, Beko and Beşiktaş are kind of synonymous. So they have. I think Beko definitely does benefit from the relationship they have with Beşiktaş. I think definitely in the 90s and even in 2000s, I definitely think Beko got in part put on the map due to that relationship. But of course, since then, Beko has become a global brand. They've sponsored clubs like Barcelona. Do they still need it? Really? It's almost like it's almost like, okay, we had this synonymous relationship before, and it's almost out of loyalty to Beşiktaş that they sponsor at this point. And that is, like you said, also one of the big limitations with football clubs, and this is one of the frustrations for even foreign investors in the Premier League and big clubs around the world, is that as a football club, you are at the end of the day still very limited in what revenue streams you can monetize. Because yes, you can monetize fans to a certain extent, but it has a significant limitation.
Of course.
And it's difficult, I think, as a football club to try and create new revenue streams that aren't already there. We see that now with Galatasaray, they're opening cafes, right? They're opening pubs, which is another great way for them to pump some carapara into their club. But but yeah, you see, it's what can Beşiktaş realistically do? I don't know. The biggest issue is that I think those revenue streams that you're gonna have, the main big sponsorship deals, those are very important. And I think the only president in Beşiktaş history, and when I say Beşiktaş history, I mean the last 25 years, not the entire history, of course, but I think the only Beşiktaş president in the last 25 years who did a good job with monetizing sponsors is Fikret Orman. And maybe he was lucky, because Vodafone were looking to make inroads in Turkey at the time, and it was just a perfect storm. But every president before, and especially after, has really failed to deliver on those sponsorships.
Yeah, I agree there. And if you say, okay, it is difficult to create revenue streams, but I think Turkey is also a great place to create those extra revenue streams. But you need a good, capable board network to do that. And I think a lot of things are possible, and I think they're omitting, or they're just incapable of doing so, of really getting to those revenue streams. We have an extraordinary position as a football club or as a sports club in Turkey, because all of those real estate deals, they don't happen. They only happen because you are the sports club. You have a goal. You have a social goal, right? That's in our bylaws. You have a social goal to promote sports and things like that. That's the reason why the government is willing to give you land, which then you can develop, and those revenues you can use to promote sports and things like that. You get land to make a sports field or to make a sports center, right? Those are things that are included in your dealings with the government. So, and that's of course that Adala really wants to push forward to. He said, okay, I want to add more real estate deals. Okay, that's great. So that's one part of it. And I think definitely they should pursue this and they should make use of it. On the other hand, I think they're also leaving a lot of gaps in other revenue streams. We have the app. You can basically, I haven't heard anything about the app for months.
No.
So I really wonder if they're really developing things there. Because I agree with you, you can squeeze so much out of your fans, and it's also not fair. But you need to look into further or different type of revenues and symbiotic relation with your fans.
They are doing that a little bit now, right? With the whole Gen Beşiktaş campaign they just started. It's a decent thing, but like I think there's a lot of ways. We've talked about this in the past, Ural. How poorly they target us. Diaspora terms,
as well.
Very poorly. I think I know some things about, for example, the Carta Jurase EU, how that is being managed, not by the people who manage it actually, but how that is managed outside of Turkey. Like how they get stocked and stuff like that is not optimal. And I just think in general they should be doing stuff. I think. Why don't they, for example, organize city trips, right? I think there's a lot of money to be made there.
Of course.
Do Europeans, when you have a European home game and a league home game, turn it into a package deal, 2 tickets or whatever, and give people a 5-day, 6-day stay. Don't we have our own hotel, or isn't that the intention that we're going to have our own hotel or something?
Yeah, I think they're changing. I think they're changing the plan again.
Yeah.
I think there's not much talk of hotel anymore. So it could be turned into an office or apartments
But a hotel would be great,
it's
right?
not clear yet.
Like they could use that then to create city trips and stuff like that, and just use the merchandising, do a better job at that. I mean, if you look at some of these designs sometimes for the merchandising side of things, it looks like it's made in by a kid in paint or something. Like I don't know.
No, I agree. So there you can do so much better.
Yeah.
Under Fiat Orman, you had this cooperation with Les Benjamins, which is a clothing brand, a pretty popular clothing brand. It was a great collaboration.
Yeah.
Explore those type of things, or change indeed your designs, because now I agree with you. I don't want every clothing to be with a big logo and things like that. You can also make it more like a daily that you can wear on a day-to-day basis type of thing, and if you know type of clothing line.
Exactly.
There are so I can list 10, 20 business ideas that you can explore and make a business case out of it, but to be honest, this board is not going to do that, and I don't think that the broader network of the club, so the rich people, etc., nobody is invested in this to make something out of it. To be honest, so everybody's looking at their own interests, and that's it. And I think Adal is very limited in that sense. He knows real estate, sort of. Sure. Well, he knows real estate, but. Yeah, look at what he managed there. Yeah, I think it's very poor, to be honest. You can say whatever you want about it, but his promise was something else. Yeah, so he didn't deliver at all. No, yeah.
He promised 200 million and he delivers 150 at best. So he's again, like I said earlier, he underperforms. He comes up short. He over promises and under delivers. It's always the same with him. It's with everything. And at the end of the day, I'm sure Beşiktaş will be good for the club, but in the meantime, while he is hyper focusing on that, everything else is left on the sidelines, kind of just And at the end of the day, the only way to truly the only way what we are now trying to do when we're brainstorming here, we're trying to fix the club by running it more efficiently, more smoothly. But then at the end of the day, everything stands and falls by what the team is performing on the pitch. So it is to be said that if Adale manages to get a good transfer period in the summer, I think January was good actually. I think it was a good window. If we have another January window in the summer and actually create a team that's going to be able to get into Europe, it's going to be able to compete in the league, it's going to be playing good football. You don't have to win the league necessarily for there to be an excitement around the club. And look at Arsenal, for example. Like, obviously now I think that excitement has died down a little bit because of the terrorist football they're playing, but they've been hyped every season for the last 5 seasons because they feel like we're building, and we're growing towards something. And that you can create that with Beşiktaş. You don't have to immediately win the big one, but if you can just, like what Trabzon is doing this season, or what Fenerbahce is doing, well, Fenerbahce doing this is of course what you would expect because of the money they spend, but if you can do that and you can clamp on into the latter weeks of the season, yeah, I think a lot of Beşiktaş fans would be happy with that, especially if it's done with good football. And that would...
Yeah.
Shirts, for example,
of course,
are going to sell a lot better if you perform.
Of course.
Yeah.
Of course, and I can't disagree with you, and that always goes hand in hand. But still, I think regardless of the performance of the team, I think that the issues with the club on that end, sort of on the business end, it's clear, right? It needs a huge restructuring in my view, huge overhaul, and you still need to do that because that will also enable better performance of the team, because you get a bigger budget, you get a better facilities, things like that. You can have a better academy, you can invest more there, you can invest more in your A team, also in the other branches. So that goes hand in hand, obviously, but you cannot only rely on the success of the team. I think the club itself needs to become a much better structured and organized club, so that you can also enable the team to have their successes. Because now you're scrambling for budget. Yeah, can we pay it? Can we not pay it? And also, what happens if a player has a small dip, and if it's an expensive player, we are immediately the pitchforks are already out, and we write this player off, right? Yeah. So that also is created because we have such a tight budget. If we would, I don't know, maybe have more the budget of, if at Fenerbahce also you never have this discussion almost. Let's say if Osimhen doesn't perform that great, nobody's standing there with pitchforks and writing him off and say, okay, this is a waste and etc. Because they feel they have the room, they have the budget anyway. We'll buy just another player and we'll be fine. That's the mindset they have.
Yeah, Fenerbahce is
we have the mindset.
The better example, right? They signed Edson Alvarez in the beginning of the season, 20 plus million. Now you don't even hear about them anymore, right? Like and they don't and we're still talking about Al Musrati, right?
Yeah.
And
exactly.
They have so many players over the last couple of years they paid so much money for, and they don't even talk about it anymore because they also don't, as a club, obviously they are in a different position because they had first Ali Koç, who was very wealthy, but now I think Fenerbahce, depending on what's going to happen in the future, like it looks like their new president Saadettin Saran has been doing what Adale has done as well, spending future income already, right? Like, so maybe they're going in for an even darker time. I don't know, but we're talking about Beşiktaş's bill here, of course. And Fenerbahce, you always feel like there's some rich guy that's going to be all like, oh, fuck it, I'll just pay for everything, right?
Ali Koç will step in anyway. But the thing is, it's more, and that's what I said with sort of this mindset and also these sponsors. And again, I really understand it from a 2% Beko point of view. It's more the board that needs to arrange this because you're devaluing the club's worth, right? So if Fenerbahce and Galatasaray are getting more, and each sponsorship deal is much less than theirs, regardless of the reason, you're devaluing our club in that sense. You becoming the gap becomes bigger.
Perception
and bigger.
Is reality, right?
Yeah, and that's what I'm most worried about, to be honest, because then it also becomes more difficult to get better deals and then it really hinges on do you have a successful performance of the team? Do you go to Champions League and things like that? And then that becomes even more of a necessity. And then if that doesn't happen, then you have a huge problem.
Yeah, that's the problem. Of course, we haven't really had any success in 5 years since we won our last title, and then of course we went into the Champions League and had a terrible campaign. That doesn't help. So yeah, there's like it's I don't think it's that abnormal for sponsors not to be too interested. If we would qualify for the Champions League regularly, that's a different story. But we don't. We struggle to get into the Europa League even at this point. So, yeah. Anything else?
No, unfortunately.
Oh, sorry. Go ahead.
No, I just want to say it's also a little bit about the story that you tell. I agree with your view on the sponsors, but it's also a little bit the story and the plan that you have and believing that, and them buying into that story. And it's also about that. It's also sales and that you have to do with them. So, but anyway, it's clear that they are not capable of doing it. I'm just looking at my notes if we missed anything. Yeah, so there is a lot about Aşçıoğlu, so the Fulya complex and the rental agreements, etc. Nothing much changed there, but they're so they're contradicting their own statements. They're contradicting it. They were very harsh on Hasan Arat, rightfully so. That's fine. Yeah. But they're now doing the same things, not doing tenders, not being open about contracts and things like that, giving away basically. If you look at the numbers again, signing rental contracts, everybody questions: is this the right step to do? So that makes it very convoluted. In my view, their performance. Let's not dive into the details, but it's still an issue and it's still not clarified. And what I blame the audit report for is that they are also not clear, also missing these important elements. And it is as if they are under the influence of or pressure of the board of not including certain aspects of these things, which is of course quite a bold statement. But it's still not clear if the Arroyo transfer was paid by Demirel, for instance. There's no clarity on it. Where is the sponsorship money from Ahmet Nurçebi and what was the chair of the Divan? They were he said they will sponsor the volleyball team, etc. So no mention of it at all. It's completely forgotten. One last interesting thing: the pitch will be replaced as every season. He said it will cost 700,000 USD. There will be concert, but the revenue from the concert is 4 million. So it looks like we're having a revenue of 3.3 or profit from this concert, and then replacing the pitch. And why I mentioned this, because they blamed the board that they were replacing the pitch. It cost a lot of money. Why are they doing this, etc., etc. And now they present it as a success. The pitches, we were replacing it anyway, and now we're making use of the stadium and doing concerts. But it's exactly like the previous boards did as well. So it's quite an interesting way of how they behave themselves, to be honest.
Yeah. Final question, quick, cheeky prediction. Do you think Adal is going to see the end of his term?
I think he will definitely survive the summer. Some say that there will be elections for him to reaffirm his position, which I would find quite strange. But some say it will come sort of. It will be logic. They think. I think he will survive, of course, until definitely the summer. It really depends on in October, if we are then out of Europe, etc. Then it will become very difficult, to be honest.
Yeah, everything will hinge on this transfer window, right? Yeah. If he does a good job, if he puts together a good team, and look, if you look even at the team right now, if we would be playing, not even that we're playing great football or anything, but if we would be getting the results we're getting now. If we would get that from the start of the season, we would be in the title race right now. because
Yeah.
Fenerbahce and
Funny
Galatasaray
enough, yeah.
yeah. So, I mean, just give us... We had so many games in the first half of the season we could have won. So with a little bit of luck, a little bit of more quality, probably. We talk about luck, but it really, at the end of the day, it's quality. Because what we saw in the second half of the season, as soon as Emirhan kind of went out of that back line, as soon as Gökhan Sazda kind of went out of that back line, suddenly we saw a lot less individual mistakes leading to goals. And yeah, I mean, that's quality. That's not luck. That's quality, right? We still have to score more goals. We don't have the wingers yet, but we have a striker right now who's significantly overperforming in his xG. In the first half of the season, we had a striker that was underperforming his xG. Yeah, I mean the foundations are there for a good team, I think, but all will depend on making the right moves in the summer. And
but do you think they will stay? Those because I agree with you. There are some, but will all stay, for instance, or do you think there will be an offer and we'll again need to look for a striker, even though some say we need a starting striker anyway? That discussion, of course.
yeah.
But do you think that he or Murillo will they stay?
Yeah, I think Agbadu, Murillo, they will be here. They're not going anywhere, I don't think. Orkun, I don't think will be going anywhere unless there's a monster offer. But yeah, you could, for example, Orkun, if you think about it, like, if he has a good World Cup, and if somebody puts in a monster offer for him, like, let's say, I mean, it's not very realistic, but 70, 80 million, I'm just saying something. I'm not saying it's realistic, but yeah, that could change the financial future of the club, right? Like, that's too much to refuse, really, even though it would be detrimental to the product on the pitch. But I think, like, Oh Hyun-gyu, I could see him go if he has a good World Cup, for sure. But I think it'll be for a significant fee. And then I think there's options there on the market right now. But then the question is, what are they going to do, right? Like, are they going to overspend a lot of money on a 30-something-year-old Lukaku, for example? And for the record, I love Lukaku. But, he's 32, 33, just coming out of a bad injury. He will be asking for a lot of money.
Exactly.
You're going from a striker who's making $1.5 million a year, then to a striker who will want 10 million a year or something. Yeah, that's a significant difference, right? Like, also on your budget. So I think, Oh Hyun-gyu is the only one from these new signings that I could see leave in the summer if he has a good World Cup. I don't think anyone else will leave, honestly.
Okay.
I don't know how you feel about that, but I think that's...
No, but there's a lot of talk. So I was just wondering your view, because there's a lot of talk that even the newcomers, that they won't stay. I think I feel there's also talk about that Jallo wants to leave. Felix is already not regarded by Sergen, it seems.
Those are not players that are foundational building blocks for the coming season. I think those are interchangeable ones. I think there's only a handful of players that really you have to keep. And that's Agbadu, that's Murillo, that's Orkun, Olaitan, and Oh Hyun-gyu. Yeah, exactly.
I would include him as well, to be honest.
And I think everyone else is replaceable. I mean, our wingers are not good. I think whoever is playing next to Agbadu, whether it's Jallo, Felix, or Emirhan, I think you can let go of at least one of those guys.
But not three. So
no.
I'm worried about. So it's even with those names, we were again changing a whole team. It's ridiculous. I understand that not out of 10 transfers, not all 10 will be a success, but the rate is so high. You just mentioned 4 or 5 names, and the rest is interchangeable again, right? It's so. It's so worrisome.
I'm gonna do a rare thing here and defend Serel Adala. How many of those players that are replaceable did he sign? Not many, right? Like Felix,
some are alone, of course,
Felix,
under his.
Felix, Emirhan were previous board in the midfield. In Didi, he signed in Didi. he signed Cengiz, he signed Cherny, so he signed Jallo. I mean, he signed Ridvan. So most of them he did sign actually, but
yeah.
I mean,
no, but I understand what you mean. But the loans, I don't want to include the loans because you lend them for a reason because you're not convinced about their performance. That's how I perceive it. So if Aslani doesn't work out, it's fine. You test it, he goes away. No hard feelings, right? Same with Jota Silva. That's fine, right? Those you can interchange, but it talks about Cherny. It's a shame that they haven't worked out, or at least until now, are not included in that fixed starting 11 or that backbone of the team.
In an ideal world, I think if we had these signings we made in January, who so far I think Arbadu, Murillo, Olaitan, they all are, in my mind, starters for next season. That's great success, really, if you think about it. Yeah. Because who did they sign other than him? Aslani, and Aslani is the only one I think you can say, okay, well, probably just send him back. That's a great success. But then, of course, the summer window is a little bit different. You have, I think if from the summer window, the only player that you really want to keep is Orkun. And if you could only add Cherny to that equation, if Cherny was performing, I think you'd be in a really good position, because then instead of having to find 2 good wingers, you only have to find 1 good winger. But now you're back in a position where you have to find 2. And on top of that, you have to find another striker as well, because going into the season with only 1 striker is not a good idea either, right? And
no, but it's still a quite daunting transfer window, to be honest.
Of course,
a lot of players need to go. You need a lot of new players.
But if you,
it's not an easy task.
If you can sign another good 5 players like you did now, because Agbadu, Murillo, Olaitan, it's 4 with all. So we had 4 good transfers in January. If we can do another 4 good transfers in the summer, then you add maybe Ridvan to that. That's fine, I think, right? Like, you don't have to, not all 11 players need to be great, but you need to have like 8 or 9 good players. And right now, I think we have 5 good players. So 5 good enough players, I'll put it that way. And we still need to add like 3 or 4 to that, and then we need to add some options on the bench. So there's a lot of work to be done, and at the end of the day, that will decide whether or not Settle Adal sees out his term as a Beşiktaş president, because he cannot afford another misstep. Like, if next season is a carbon copy of this season, then he doesn't see the end of the season. There's no chance.
No, for sure.
Well,
and also there will be a voting on the finances again. I don't know if that will trigger an election. So it's always sort of a danger that hangs above his head. But performance-wise, I completely agree with you. So there's a lot to do, but there's also a lot of money to be spent. So let's see how they do it in the transfer.
Yeah. Let's see. Exactly. Let's see. We've been hearing and seeing lots of this. Like, I feel like they're really gassing up the summer, and I feel like everyone, Firat Günayer, Sercan Dikme, Ertan Suzgun, Murat doesn't, to a lesser extent. I feel like he's always a little bit more nuanced and careful, but you do get the sense from everyone that there's gonna be a lot of money being spent again. Beşiktaş are gonna spend similar numbers, if not even more than they did last season, and one wonders where that money comes from, right? Because if all the sponsorships are already accounted for, already spent, essentially, like, where are they gonna get that 50, 60, 70, 80 million euros to spend this summer? I don't know. Feels like they're just digging a deeper hole for the club, but at the same time, we can't afford, as a club, we also cannot afford another 4th place finish next season, right?
No, that's the problem. No, exactly. You have to invest.
Yeah.
So you have to do it. You cannot say to them, don't do it, because then they should have done it like this season and even last season. Say, okay, you know what? We're not going to do anything. We're just going to improve the finance of the club.
Yeah.
But they didn't. They choose, of course, to improve it, but not in that way. Not like a FEDA season. You cannot call a FEDA season, the coming season, a FEDA. Then that will be unacceptable. So they have to. They put themselves in that position that they really have to perform, and that means spending. Maybe indeed spending that amount of money. Yeah.
And the only way
or committing
then,
the club to it.
And then the only way out of the financial hole really is basically, if you think about it, this is what Galatasaray does, right? Like they win the league and they go to the Champions League, and that's the only reason why financially they look in a good place. But take that 50 million euro or more Champions League money away, and they're in deep shit too.
Yeah, they have immediately a problem. Even with the sponsors now, it's not a comfortable position they're in, to be honest. And they new step in, but each time it's getting more and more troublesome. So, but I agree with you. If that the type of revenue stream, and also because I think the sale of their shirts, etc., is also a lot of that is tied to this performance. So yeah, that will also impact that, of course, right? So they will have less income as well. Yeah. That's how it will work.
Yeah.
Exciting times ahead.
Yeah, exactly. Sorry, the dog is barking at someone outside. I think that's our cue to call it.
Yes.
Well, thank you very much for explaining a little bit more about these finances. If people have questions, feel free to drop them in the comments, and we will address them maybe in a follow-up video or something. But I think you were pretty concise and clear about all of it, and it's good to have someone like you who understands these figures, understands these numbers, because really, I mean, as somebody without a financial background like that, and I can only imagine other people online, they're reading these numbers, they're seeing it, and they can't make sense of it at all. And just the one explanation that you gave already is that this is for all the transfer fees, all the wages, all in already. That already explains so much why it seems like, because 128 million seems like such a massive amount for the debt to rise. How is that even possible? But then when you explain it, it makes perfect sense why that is. Doesn't mean that it's a good thing, but it makes sense of it at least. So thanks for your explanation, and hopefully we can at least
pleasure.
End this season on a positive note. The cup game is coming up soon. Of course, Sunday we have Samsun first, but next Thursday on the 23rd we have Alanya in the Turkish Cup, and our players have already been saying it after the game against Antalya, like, we are focused on the Turkish Cup. The Turkish Cup is our priority right now. So for us, that seems to be the ticket to Europe, ticket to hopefully the Europa League. Although, as you know, personally, I would not mind going to the Conference League, because then there is always that dangling carrot of the final in your own stadium. But financially, the Europa League is really what we need, because it's just more income, and at the end of the day, that's what we need the most. So, good luck, fingers crossed for Beşiktaş, and thank you, Ural, for your time. And of course, thank you all for watching as well. And we'll see you again in the future with another financial update, and of course our upcoming episode following the Samsung game and all that kind of stuff. So keep following us on the channel, or on Instagram, Facebook, TikTok, wherever you follow us. Well, thanks again, buddy.
Yes, my pleasure.